As we saw in the last video about simple sentences, sometimes writing too many simple sentences can make your writing choppy. Now that we know the basics of independent clauses and simple sentences, in this video, we will look at how and when to join them together to create compound sentences. What is a compound sentence? Here is an example from the text we read earlier of a compound sentence. The Canadian workforce is extremely diverse, and it may be very different from what you are used to. What makes it a compound sentence? Here are the two independent clauses, each with a subject and corresponding verb that agrees with the subject, and each one expressing one complete thought or idea. The clauses are joined by the word and, which is called a conjunction. So a compound sentence consists of two or more independent clauses or simple sentences joined together to make one longer sentence. When should we use a compound sentence over a simple one? When two simple sentences have a close relationship to each other. For example, you may not like or agree with the differences, but you need to try and understand why they exist. The two simple sentences have the same subject, you. If we left it like this, you may not like or agree with the differences. You need to try and understand why they exist. It sounds very choppy. Furthermore, it does not emphasize the relationship between the two sentences. We saw that there are three main ways to join together independent clauses to form a compound sentence. Two of the ways are very common. One is not so common. Can you remember what they are? The first way, as you saw, is by using a comma and a conjunction. So words like and, but, or so. The second way, which is also very common, is by using a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb. So words like in addition, however, and furthermore. And finally, the last way, which is not very common, is using a semicolon without the conjunctive adverb. Let's look at these three methods in more detail. Let's take these two independent clauses again. You may not like or agree with the differences. You need to try and understand why they exist. Each of these clauses has a subject and verb and expresses a complete idea, so they are both simple sentences. And we can join them together using a conjunction. Remember that a conjunction means a word that joins two pieces of grammar together. You may not like or agree with the differences, but you need to try and understand why they exist. Here we have used a comma and the conjunction but to create one new compound sentence. The ideas in the two clauses are contrasted to one another. One is negative and the other positive. Therefore, the conjunction but was selected. So now we can see that this conjunction in the sentence actually has two purposes. It can join the clauses together, and it can express a relationship between the two ideas. There are 7 conjunctions of this type: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. One popular way that students can remember them all is that the first letter of each word spells fanboys. Remember that to use these, each conjunction must come between the two independent clauses with a comma before it, and that each of these conjunctions expresses a different meaning and shows a relationship between the two clauses. So make sure to think of your meaning before you choose the conjunction. Now, try matching the conjunction with its meaning. You can pause the video if you'd like to try that. Were you correct? Let's see. For expresses reason. And means addition. Nor means negative addition. Both the clauses need to be negative to use nor. But is a contrast. Or means a choice. Yet shows another contrast, but with a little more surprise. And so signifies a result. Look at this sentence and look at the conjunction in it. To be successful in a Canadian workplace, you need to pay attention to cultural differences in the workplace and attempt to understand the reasons for differences. Is it a compound sentence? No, this is just a simple sentence. Why? Here's a phrase and a comma. Then, here's a subject and verb, but there is no subject in front of the second verb and no comma before the and. So remember that conjunctions can also join together other pieces of grammar like verbs and nouns. Let's talk about nor. Nor is a very special conjunction which can be tricky to use. To use nor, both independent clauses have to be negative. And number 2, the subject and verb of the second sentence needs to be inverted. Number 3, the nor replaces the not. Here is an example. You should not assume that people from a different country will think like you. You should not assume that the person will understand how you think. Joining these two clauses together would result in this sentence. You should not assume that people from a different country will think like you, nor should you assume that the person will understand how you think. As we already saw, a conjunctive adverb is a kind of adverb that joins two independent clauses together, and it also shows the relationship between the ideas. Let's look at an example. From the text, there is this compound sentence. Can you break it down into the two independent clauses? It's important to listen and ask questions and appreciate the points of view of others. For example, you should not assume that people from a different country think the same way that you do. So, the two independent clauses. It's important to listen and ask questions and appreciate the points of view of others, and you should not assume that people from a different country think the same way that you do. Let's look at this other example we saw that was joined by a conjunction. The Canadian workforce is extremely diverse, and it may be very different from what you are used to. Can you try joining it together with a conjunctive adverb? We replace the comma with a semicolon, and we replace the conjunction with the conjunctive adverb in addition and add a comma after it. So just like conjunctions, conjunctive adverbs also signify a range of meanings like addition, contrast, and result. Can you place these conjunctive adverbs in the correct column? You can pause the video while you figure it out. Did you get it right? Here's a note about conjunctive adverbs. When joining independent clauses, conjunctive adverbs must come between the two clauses with a semicolon. However, they can also be placed in the beginning of sentences to act as introductory transition words. We'll use an example you've seen before. You may not like or agree with the differences, but you need to try and understand why they exist. We can change the sentence in two ways. You may not like or agree with the differences, however, you need to try and understand why they exist. And you may not like or agree with the differences, however, you need to try and understand why they exist. These two sentences actually mean practically the same thing. The difference, however, is that the one with the semicolon indicates that these two sentences are closely related to each other. That's the one I would choose. Finally, we'll look at the least common way to join independent clauses, the semicolon. Recall, the definition of a semicolon is a punctuation mark that is usually used to join two independent clauses together. You should also not assume that people understand everything that you say. It's a good idea to explain what you mean by using different words or testing their understanding. Using just a semicolon is a grammatical way to join the two sentences, but keep in mind it only works if the relationship between the sentences is very clear and very close. Here, there is a close relationship to the sentences between not assuming people understand you and how you can manage that. Again, though, especially in technical writing, this is one of the ways of joining sentences that is the least precise because we don't know the relationship between the two sentences. Just before I leave you, there are a couple of points of caution about making compound sentences. The number one error of making compound sentences is called a comma splice. This means that the writer uses a comma to join two independent clauses instead of the ways listed above. The other error is called a run-on sentence. This means that the writer just joined the two sentences together with no technique at all. The third error is forgetting the commas before the conjunction or after the conjunctive adverb. And that's it. By practicing your skills for writing simple and compound sentences and writing them correctly, you'll already have two really powerful tools to make your writing clear, correct, and precise. Thanks for listening.